get a little housekeeping done first. Just to remind everybody, the Next Gen user group page is up and running. I think we have a little problem with the presentation PDF. I think it's linking to the old one from last week or the week before. So I'm trying to get that fixed. There is a link on this page to the feedback form, and that should be working. Just to cover the reason why you're stuck with me showing you presentations, the website or WFDSS Next Gen is not set up yet to be able to have everybody log into it. It's going to use INAP, and INAP is not working at this point yet for WFDSS, so everyone can't get in there. Typically, the user acceptance testing, that's what the UAT means that you'll see in the application when I show screens, is for user acceptance testing, but no, not everybody can get in there. So with that, I'm going to present a presentation today. We're going to go over map layers, and as you guys know, map layers, even in old WFDSS, are somewhat labor intensive, so and take up a lot of bandwidth. So I've pre-made a PowerPoint of screenshots, so we didn't have to wait for things to load and stuff like that. So I'll go ahead and get that started. If you guys could keep your questions till I'm done, you can throw them in the chat and I'll go through them. But if you could hold on to them till we get to the end, that would be great. And if you guys could, I don't know if having your cameras on are going to mess up the presentation for folks. So if you keep your cameras off, that would be great. With that, we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, get rid of this screen. It's annoying. I think at this point, sorry about that. Okay, so with that, we'll get right into this session about map layers. It's focus group 4. You guys could please take the time to fill out the form after the session. It'd be great, because this is your time to give input to the application. They still have time to change things. So with that, we'll move on. Everybody see the screen okay?
Yep.
All right. So Next Gen has different layer categories. They're somewhat different than what you're currently seeing in WFDSS. We're going to go through each one of these sections. You can see there's many, and they've broken things up. So instead of having one big, large disturbance history folder, we now have those breaking out. Same with infrastructure. Natural and cultural resources are also broke out. The only one that's still kind of big is the fire, environment, and weather. So with that, we'll move right into this, not to waste everybody's time. So the first point I would like to make as we get started is it behaves a little bit differently than you're currently used to. As you can see in this first image to the left, I have current year fire points and perimeters turned on, but yet in the map screen, you're not seeing anything. You have to check this top box to make everything active below it. Seems a little clunky when you first start using it, but when you're used to using a bunch of layers all the time, you can always have the layers below the top box checked that you use all the time, and then you just check that top box on and off to clean up the junk on your screen and make it a little bit more usable. So as you're picking the layers you want to choose, just remember the top caret box needs to be checked to make them visible. Moving on, there's also legends available in WFDSS Next Gen. Not all my screenshots are going to show you the legend because it takes up a lot of space and they're hard to read as it is because they're screenshots. So down below the map, when you get in WFDSS, it'll have the typical stack of papers, which is where all your layers are, and that'll activate the layer list. The next icon next to that at the bottom, that looks like maybe a shopping list. That is the icon that activates your legend and pops that up. Next to that, there's the 4 little tiles. You'll see this in the RMA dashboard and other places to change your base layer. There's a little measure tool. There's a point tool, and this little up and down arrow is a swipe tool. And I think maybe fire behavior analysts are going to use that most. Like if they do edits on a landscape, they can see current land fire data, what the original looked like, and then they can swipe and look at their edits and see how their edits compare to the way the original one looked. So with that, we'll move on. Oops, fat fingered that. Oh, you might be wondering where the models are showing up in that in the layers, because you didn't see them. So we're going to get more into the incidents in another presentation, but just to give you guys a quick preview of where the models are going to show up, your model results, they'll be in a specific incident. I'm in the Moose incident here, and I would click on the analyses, and I would then be able to, if I was an analyst, I could start analysis from here. Or if I'm like an editor and I need an analysis run and I don't have an editor or a fire behavior analyst, I can request an analysis, and that's on this first tab. And then if you click on the existing analyses, if I did have analyses, they would show up here. Currently, you know, all the portions aren't built out all the way, so I'm sorry I can't show you any analyses. Like I said, in another situation or another instance, we'll have we'll cover all the incident stuff, and we'll probably break that up into several sessions too. A lot to cover in that one. Makes my head spin already. So moving on, the National Incident Reference, that top category in the layer list, that's where you're going to have everything for the current year, all the current year fire points and current year perimeters, and some other detailed information that, you know, you can probably currently see in EGP as you drill into an incident. One point I wanted to make is when you're looking at the fire perimeters from this year, if you click on the edge of the fire perimeter, it'll pop up another window where you can see the details. If you just click in the center of the polygon, it will not pull that up. You have to click towards the edge. So that's something I learned as I was putting this together for you guys. So also in this fire environment and weather, much like we used to have, well, I do believe we currently can see the weather stations. I didn't double check that because I just take some of these things for granted. I did look this for way too long. So you get these little raw station icons that are WX. If you click on one of them, it'll pull up the general information on that station, as well as keep scrolling and go to the next page. You'll get the current weather conditions that it recorded last, and also a link to go to Meso West to look at all the historic data at that station. We also are going to continue to have the VEERS heat detection data available. It's my understanding MODIS is going away, so it'll just be VEERS available as it goes forward. It displays pretty much as you see it currently. 6 hours, 12, 24, 7-day, and year to date. Some new stuff that I used to look at in WildfireSAFE, I think it's also in the RMA dashboard, is the severe fire weather potential forecast. It's kind of a handy tool when you're planning out a few days. You know, it's a forecast. All forecasts aren't 100% accurate, but it definitely gives you an idea of the trends of the fire weather pattern over the next week. Kind of a handy tool to have, especially when you're making a decision. The other thing that is included is the energy release forecast, ERCs, that you could see in WildfireSAFE previously. This is also handy. We used it a lot in the Southwest as the monsoons came in to see how quickly the ERCs were forecast to change and react to the moisture. So that was a nice feature. You could also see when it was going to dry back out real quick and be a problem again. You can see the burning index. That was another handy forecast to have. That's also from WildfireSAFE, one of Matt Jolly's products. That is handy too when you're doing staffing and figuring out your decision. Moving on, the fire weather zone forecast works differently than it used to work in WFDSS. Now you'll pull up a whole data layer. And I'm getting feedback from myself, I think. If it's a problem, let me know, guys. So now in this data layer, when you zoom in, you can click on the fire weather zone. You click along the boundary of it, and it'll pull it up. And then you can click on the URL. There's a view hyperlink, and then it'll go to the spot forecast site or the fire weather forecast site, and you can see that. It's kind of nice because you can also, if your fire's looking like it's going to cross into the next fire weather forecast zone, you can click right over and pull up the next forecast. So that is a handy feature now. The other thing that they've included is the lightning strike density. It's nice, it's right here. You can see what's happening on the landscape. You don't have to go hunt down a bunch of other websites to look at this anymore. And I just bookmarked a whole bunch, but this is neat. It's the last 15 minutes. This is obviously from last week, although we are getting a bunch of storms through this area again today. So moving on, they're also providing the current gridded weather from the Weather Service. So you'll get wind velocity, wind speed, air temperature, relative humidity, and the National Weather Service NEXRAD radar. I didn't capture a screen of that. This is actually showing you the relative humidity across the country last week. I think it's a little greener in a few spots. Okay. Another nice feature, quantitative precipitation. It's not the forecast, it's what was experienced over the last hour, 12 hours, 24 hours, and 48 hours. So it'll show you the accumulated precip. Also nice for planning ahead and seeing how that moisture may or may not affect your landscape. Also included, there's something we had a shop for in other places, not only decision makers, but fire behavior folks, is severe fire, weather outlooks. A lot of times predictive services will help people find this. You get severe thunderstorm forecast or outlook, the dry thunderstorm critical fire weather outlook, and the non-dry thunderstorm critical fire weather outlook. And the dry thunderstorm critical fire weather outlook was pretty handy as the monsoon started up here in the Southwest this year. And I think as some of this moisture is coming in up north, it'll be a handy tool for other folks too.
Cool.
Included right here, instead of when you get into your decision process, you can start looking at the extended outlooks. This is the stuff from the climate prediction website. So you can see the monthly drought outlook, seasonal drought, all those 6 to 10 day temp and precips, as well as 8 to 14 day outlooks for temp and precip. Kind of a nice handy feature, and you can see it across the country. So last week we were looking like we should be pretty wet this week, and most places I know are right on track right now. So moving out of that long list, and let me just go back there. That was a long list in the fire environment and weather that we had. So all that is in that section. So when you want to look at these layers, just a reminder, that top caret box at fire environment and weather needs to be checked to activate them. So if you're looking at a bunch of these layers regularly and you don't want to see them, you just leave them toggled and turn off that top box. Kind of handy. So we're also going to continue to have boundaries in the application. The geographic area coordination centers are included, dispatch centers, counties, jurisdictional agencies and protection agencies, as well as the federal admin areas for fire and the TNC lands. So that's pretty much standard. We'll move on to the designated areas. This category will have your wilderness study areas, inventory road lists, other designated areas, national wild and scenic rivers, national rec areas, herd management areas, and BLM grazing allotments. I'm sure it could grow if needed, but that's where it's scheduled to be started. Moving into the disturbance layers. Oh, before we go there, I forgot. I wanted to show you that, okay, on this layer, I'm zoomed in. On this image, I'm zoomed in and you can see all the designated areas. Now on the next slide, I zoomed out and a lot of them are grayed out. So they become available as you zoom in or zoom in mostly. So if you are zoomed way out and you see everything grayed out, that means you need to zoom in to start to see those layers. And that starts to come into play with many of these layers coming in these next categories. So the disturbance history for historical fire perimeters. As I said, this year's fires are in that first category we covered. So this one is historical. So it starts with last year, which is currently 2021, 2020, and then it goes into those decadal bins that you're used to seeing in the previous application. And they're all nicely labeled, and you can pull up the legend and see more data too. So moving into the next category. Oh, I must have missed burn severity. Sorry about that, guys. There's a burn severity category that I just realized I missed. But there's also a fuels treatment category. We'll move on with that one. The fuels treatment categories, it's kind of handy now because in the past we had one big layer and you kind of didn't know the treatment type, but now you can actually see whether it was a broadcast burn, fire use, other mechanical, or a wildfire non-treatment fire use kind of thing. So the only thing, as you can see, I've got 3 layers clicked on here. Every layer has the same colors. So in order to really see what happened, say in this year, you'd have to click those other layers off and it'll clean up the screen and show you just what happened in this year. So a little bit about that. Sorry, I missed the burn severity. Moving on, we have infrastructure. Infrastructure's now into 3 different categories. We have facilities, utilities and transportation, and recreation. So the first category here is facilities, which is your standard Forest Service, BLM, Park Service buildings. And then there's building clusters, which I do believe came from some county data. Moving on, we'll go into the utilities and transportation. This is another area where you got to zoom in to see some of the road data available. So I'm zoomed out now. I have a lot of gray stuff, but it has primary roads, secondary roads, local roads, comm towers, transmission lines, oil and gas pipelines, substations, power plants, and mines and mineral resources. So that's a little bit of what's available there. Next one is recreation. It's pretty much, I think, most of the stuff we currently have, campgrounds, Forest Service and BLM, national rec trails, recreation trails from USGS, national historic trails, national scenic trails, and national scenic byways. So, and it does have a couple more data layers than currently available. And all these are fed from a service. So WFDSS has trimmed down its footprint and is not hosting data like it has in the past. So moving on, these are natural and cultural resources. There's 2 categories here, one for habitat and one for air quality. This is the habitat quality, or the habitat category, sorry. Getting ahead of myself, slow down. So the critical habitat linear and polygon features are currently what you're seeing in this area. We also have sage-grouse habitat. Sorry, I didn't pick an area with sage-grouse to show up. So moving on. You can now see the air now monitors, and you can also see the air quality index. You can see today's forecast and tomorrow's forecast, which will help in some of those smoky areas where you're having, communication stuff with the public and that about the air quality. So that AQI that shows up on your iWatch will come in right here now. There's also non-attainment areas for ozone and particles and class 1 airsheds that you can view in this category. There's a lot of layers, guys. I showed this to someone else and they thought there's a lot more data available right here in this interface. So resource management considerations, these are more national layers, like aquatic retardant avoidance areas, terrestrial retardant avoidance areas, Alaska fire management options, as well as BLM management requirements. So that is what's coming in with the resource management considerations. The next one is unit fire planning. Right now, the data they have in the system, they're having a geometry issue they're trying to fix. So it looks a little funky, but basically you're going to have overlapping shapes at a unit level and a subunit level and non-overlapping shapes, very similar to what you have now. And I can try and get a link to the story map for spatial fire planning, because this will also be a service. And I'll throw that into the chat at the end here. And I know that'll be a problem for some folks. So if anybody needs anything with that, you can ping me after this. I'll put my contact info in the chat too. Should have started with that. It's on my notes too. Oh well. So next layers are elevation dynamics. That's kind of cool because, you know, as you saw on this map, it's kind of flat. We look at topos all the time. We kind of get used to looking at them. But when you start turning on the elevation and the shaded relief, it really highlights that and pops it out. So the next slide I'm going to show you is not so cool because I was having a problem connecting to Landfire. There is Landfire data available. You can see this layer's got a lot of carrots to open up and a lot of layers you can play with. The typical Landfire data actually it seems a little bit more robust than it has been in the past. So you can look at the legend, but I was having a problem displaying it. So anyway, but as I mentioned before, once an analyst is in there making landscapes, you'll be able to swipe and see the landscapes change based on edits that fire behavior analyst did for a model run. So that is what I had for the presentation. And I see there's lots of stuff in the chat. So why don't I go through?
Hey, Marlena, this is Allison. I've been tracking the chat and the questions have been getting answered. I think the only one that hasn't been answered right now is Allison's question on how often do the current condition layers refresh?
Condition layers. Is that like the gridded weather data? I don't have a good answer for that. I would think that gridded weather should update hourly, but I will double check on that.
Okay, and Wes went ahead and chatted the link to the story map. So he took care of that for everybody. And then Peter asks, why BLM management requirements and not for other agencies? I take it final product will show all agency requirements. If you see that question at 23 minutes.
Layers are available, they'll be in there. BLM must be the agency that has that layer together and as a service. And Andrew answered Peter's question too.
Great. Okay. And Mary, I see your question about Anthony Blue's post. Aaron Noonan posted a response to that question at 19 minutes after, if that helps. If we need more clarification, please feel free to ask again. And I think that might be it, Marlena. We had lots of folks stepping up to answer questions for you today.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, that one I don't know the answer to. But basically, if you have a layer on in the application, let me go back a screen or two where I have a data layer. So like I had some of the layers on earlier, the broadcast burns in that, and the fire perimeters. If you click on it, it does pop up more additional data. And I could try and get that answer and put it in the chat later, a more definitive one. I'm not remembering what the WFDSS tool does. Any other questions? Thanks, Andrew. Ability to add custom layers. Oh, like you would do in the RMA dashboard, where you could put in a URL and add layers. I don't think you're going to be able to add additional layers at this point. But that would be a good suggestion when you fill out the form, Peter. Anything else? Oh, thanks, Wes. Wes says they are going to incorporate temporary layers in the future. And yeah, Ruti, at this point, I think they're working on some of that incident content yet and how it's going to funnel into the decision. So as we build stuff out, and I do more presentations or somebody else does, they'll cover that in another session. Thanks for you folks up there at the RD&A and NIFC for stepping in and helping out with those questions. I appreciate it. Devil's in the details on a lot of these. Okay, so let me just escape out of here. I'll get Sam to fix the link on the website so that you guys can get a PDF of that presentation. And just a little plug to remember, please go click on that form link. And I must have closed my form, I had it open. And give us some feedback on how you think those map layers are turning out. If there's other things you'd like to see that we weren't super clear on today, that would be awesome. And let us know how we're doing with these focus group sessions. I do understand that, number one, I would personally prefer to log in myself and test things. So they're working towards getting that INAP working. With that, I think we'll call it good. I wasn't sure how long it would take me to get through 33 slides, so I made this an hour, but we don't have to talk for another half an hour. So thanks guys. And I am not sure what the next session is going to be. I think it might have to do with how to deal with legacy data from the old WFDSS application and how to be able to access that. We're still working out the dirty details on that. So have a good rest of your afternoon, and we'll talk to you when I get that next one done. Thanks, guys.